Good Morning Jersey with Ashley Tracy and Tim Pryor.
On BBC Radio Jersey.
Morning, 7 minutes past 8 o'clock. Now, if you thought arguing over the state's spending cutbacks was over, well, you're wrong. Earlier this month, the state's passed its controversial package of measures designed to save £145 million by 2019. But since then, members of the island's only political party, Reform Jersey, have launched a barrage of questions about the impact of these measures, many of them cuts on islanders' lives and the economy. Deputy Montfort Tadier is from the party. Deputy, we had the debate earlier on in the month and the spending plans have been passed by the states. Isn't this argument over?
Of course, we should all go home now and just let politics run its course. The issue is that, first of all, this is not just some abstract political argument. This is about real people, vulnerable people who are now feeling the effects 2 weeks, 3 weeks later of what's been passed in the States. The letters have just been sent out by Social Security. Many disabled people and others who will have their benefits cut will have got those just last Friday. This Friday gone. So this is when reality starts to kick in. This is the time over the weekend when people at my Reform Jersey colleagues and other deputies perhaps throughout the island will get phone calls from distraught and very concerned constituents saying...
Have you been getting those sorts
absolutely,
of phone calls?
and not just from my constituents, from people throughout the island as we predicted.
What are they saying to you?
They're saying that we already have very little to live on. They're often disabled people who have certain challenges, and now their income is being cut even further, even though they have very little. And these are the real consequences on the ground that we're seeing from perhaps political decisions which might seem abstract when they're being debated coming to fruition.
But we know that we have this amount of money that we need to save, and we know that we need to be making savings from somewhere. So what is Reform Jersey's answer to that?
Well, let's get back to what the government are doing, then I'll answer that question. If you have £145 million projected deficit in the next few years to fill, is it right that you go to the most vulnerable people in the community, those who actually have little or nothing in the first place, and say, what little you have, we're going to take that off you?
But my question...
And in reality, let's put this in context, because austerity is a political choice. Now, this government is saying to people with a disability that you're going to be £7 worse off a week. Now, what we can do, and what my party colleagues, I think you've had Sam Mezek being quoted already, is that we say, OK, there's a deficit to fill. First thing to do is to change the economic model, the tax system that you have, because it's no longer working. We know that in the last 10 years, taxes have shifted from corporations to individuals. The middle classes, middle and low earners are being hit. Again, that is a political choice, and it's taken place over 10 years, and now we're feeling the pinch of those decisions. So the answer is to find different ways to raise revenue, and you go where the money is. There are very many people in Jersey who are doing quite well, who actually are the beneficiaries of economic growth. And those individuals who are doing very well should be asked to contribute more in these difficult times.
But they would argue, we've done well because we've worked hard, so why should we be penalised at that end of the scale? What would you say to that?
Would they argue? I mean, why is there nobody on here?
I can't imagine that.
Why is there nobody on here to put that case? Where are the ministers here? It's always Reform Jersey who comes here. The Social Security Minister in this case refuses to come onto the programme.
She's off island at the moment, we should say.
And they have no assistant ministers. My colleague in my constituency is the assistant minister. We have collective responsibility. Why do they constantly refuse to put their ideas forward? And they have no mandate. That's the issue. I would ask people listening to the radio this morning, when you went out to the ballot box, did you actively vote for people with the intention that they would be cutting disabled people's benefits by £7 on average? In this case, the individual we've been dealing with is £12 worse a week off. That's over £600 a year worse off, and he's already living a frugal existence. And it's absolutely right that, Reform Jersey are not alone. When we brought amendments to the estates, we had 14 members voting with us, so there's an extra 11 on top of that.
So you submitted numerous written questions to ministers about the impact of these cutbacks that you say that you're hearing firsthand from islanders. What is the aim of all of these questions then? Because as we say, the medium-term financial plan has been signed off for the next year.
That's right, but the budget hasn't been signed off, and there are still measures that can be put in place. Let's look at something quite simple. Long-term incapacity allowance, we believe, is not simply income replacements. It's an allowance that recognises that certain individuals have certain challenges. We know in Jersey we don't have any free disabled bus passes, and some of that money should be going towards that in theory. We've been fighting for disabled bus passes, but now income LTIA is being considered as an earned income, therefore it engages the disregard for earned income, and this is why in many cases it's the disabled who are being hit disproportionately. And we're saying that this isn't right. I think many people agree with us, and it's an issue of raising that awareness and also trying to put in a more positive, constructive policy in place.
Within the States, you are a party of three. So how far would you say that the rest of the island supports your view on this?
I think it's a cosmopolitan's island. I think people have different views, but I think when it comes to issues of fairness, justice and, an economic plan which is sustainable, I think people want to hear that. They want to hear the alternatives and they can make their own minds up.
But ministers do say that they act on the advice of independent economists, the fiscal policy panel. Isn't that a sensible way to run the economy, to listen to outside experts?
Again, the BBC is having to put the voice of the ministers over on the radio.
It's called playing devil's advocate, Deputy.
Consistently.
It's devil's advocate.
Yeah, and maybe sometimes when we can't make it into the radio, you could play out. But that's not. I'm not having a go at the BBC. I'm not having a go at the BBC. I'm saying, why are ministers consistently failing to engage in political debate? That's not the case in the UK. I was listening to Radio 4 on the car on the way in. You have a Conservative politician who's actually criticising the Tory party's tax breaks in the UK, and you regularly have people from different parties in the studio debating with each other. In Jersey, it seems that the ministers are too scared to defend their plans because they know that they're morally unconscionable.
But again, we ask the question as the BBC, if they decline our response, then we can't force them to be here and put across their point of view.
What I'm asking people who are driving into work at the moment, why is it that senior politicians in this island who run the show are so consistently unable and unwilling to engage in political debate?
I feel like we've gone off topic just a little bit, so let me ask you this final question. What's next for this campaign of yours?
Well, again, it's not a campaign of ours per se. It's a grassroots campaign. We're hearing from people on the ground now, as we knew would be the case.
So what can you do about it?
Well, I would ask people to contact, not simply us, contact their local deputies, their constables and senators who in many cases actually did vote for these pernicious cuts, and say, what's going on? Can you come and see me? Come and see how I live? And I would ask these people to get politicised, to mobilise, have protests and actually tell their political representatives the real consequences and the real pain that they're suffering because of these cuts.
Deputy Montfort Tadier, thank you very much. He's from Reform Jersey. He says that spending cuts recently passed by the states are unfair and badly researched. His party is preparing a range of propositions to delay or overturn measures that they say will hit the poorest islanders hardest.